Claressa Shields, honey. Baby, pull up a chair and sit all the way down, because what happened in that studio this week was not an interview. It was a live television demolition, and the woman swinging the wrecking ball was Claressa herself. I need everybody to lean in close, because the clip currently setting the entire internet on fire is not just messy, it is historic. A two-time Olympic gold medalist walked into what was supposed to be the softest stop on her entire press run, and she walked out with her credibility in pieces on the floor. And sweetheart, we are going to pick up every single one of those pieces tonight, because the details are so much worse than the headlines, and the headlines are already a 5-alarm blaze. Now, if you have not seen the footage yet, do not even worry about it, because I got you. By the end of this video, you are going to understand not just what Claressa said, but why every serious voice in the culture is sitting in front of their screen with a hand over their mouth right now. And let me give you a fair warning before we even get into it, because there is one moment in this interview, one single sentence, that made the entire commentary world gasp at the exact same time. And when we get there, you are going to understand exactly why Remy Ma responded the way she responded. Because Remy Ma did respond. Not with a paragraph. Not with a post. Not with a verse. Remy Ma responded with a laugh, and that laugh is currently echoing louder than anything Claressa said in that entire sit-down. But we will get to the laugh, because the laugh only makes sense once you fully understand what came out of Claressa's mouth first. So here is the setup. Claressa Shields sat down with Miss Shenica, and for anybody who does not know, Miss Shenica has been quietly building a reputation as one of the most fearless interviewers on the entire circuit, a woman who asks the questions the bigger platforms are too scared to touch. And this sit-down was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be champion talk. Belts, legacy, the biopic, the glow, the victory lap. The kind of interview where everybody laughs, everybody plugs something, and everybody goes home clean. That is what the booking was. That is what the publicist expected. That is what the whole room was braced for. But Miss Shenica did not come to play patty cake. Miss Shenica came carrying the one question that every other host on the entire promotional circuit had been ducking for months. And I need you to really sit with that, because it is not like this question was a secret. It is not like it was some obscure little detail buried in sealed court documents. Everybody knew. Every host who giggled with her over the past year knew. Every panel that chuckled and changed the subject knew. Every producer who prepped the soft questions knew. They all watched the elephant stomp around the studio, and they all decided that protecting the vibe mattered more than protecting the truth, and honestly, more than protecting the woman sitting in the chair. And then Miss Shenica looked this woman dead in the face and asked, plain as daylight, how much longer are you willing to be in a relationship with somebody else's husband? No cushion. No soft intro. No, so girl, some people are saying. Just the question, laid on the table like a certified letter that somebody finally had to sign for. And according to everybody in that room, the air left the building. Because that is the question the entire culture has been choking on for over a year, and it took Miss Shenica, not the big networks, not the glossy podcasts, not the shows with the $1 million sets and the 40-person crews, it took Miss Shenica to finally say it out loud in front of a rolling camera. Now here is where it goes from uncomfortable to catastrophic. Because she had a dozen doors she could have walked through. She could have smiled and pivoted. She could have redirected to the fight. She could have said the one sentence every publicist on the planet would have tattooed on her wrist, which is, I do not discuss my partner's private matters out of respect. Any of those doors, and we are not here tonight. Any of those doors, and this interview comes and goes like a summer breeze and nobody remembers it by Friday. Instead, Claressa opened her mouth and said, and I need you to hear this exactly the way the room heard it, oh yeah, he is nobody's husband. Nobody's husband. Sweetheart, I had to run that back 3 times, because my ears refused to process it the first 2. A man with a pending divorce filing is not nobody's husband. A man whose paperwork is still sitting in a court queue in the state of New York is somebody's husband. He is Remy Ma's husband. And I do not say that to be cute. I say that because it is a legal fact with a case number attached to it. Filed is not finalized. Filed means the process started. Filed means somebody submitted documents to a clerk. A filing is a starter pistol, baby, it is not the finish line. Until a judge signs that decree, the marriage exists. On paper. In law. In reality. In every single sense of the word that matters. And the fact that Claressa Shields felt comfortable sitting in front of a camera and announcing, on her own private authority, that a legally married man is somehow nobody's husband, tells you everything you need to know about the conversations happening behind those closed doors. Because that is not a thought she came up with in the shower. That is not an original idea. That is a pillow talk talking point. Somebody has been whispering that phrase into her ear at night, rehearsing it with her, coaching her to say it with her whole chest. And we are absolutely going to talk about who that somebody is, because his silence in all of this is the loudest sound in the entire room. But hold on, because it gets worse. The champion did not just try to redefine the word husband on live television. She then tried to reframe the entire divorce filing as a grand romantic gesture. She told Miss Shenica, with a straight face, that Papoose filed because he is serious about her. Oh, baby. Baby, no. Papoose did not file because he is serious about Claressa. Papoose filed because Remy Ma grabbed him by the collar in front of the whole world and marched him to the courthouse steps like a child being walked to the principal's office. And that is not my opinion. That is the timeline. And the timeline has receipts, timestamps, and about 40 million witnesses who watched the whole thing happen in real time. So let me take you back, because in order to understand why that one sentence detonated the way it did, you have to remember what Remy Ma did back in May of last year. And in case the algorithm has been burying things on you, because the algorithm has been burying a lot of things lately, I am going to refresh every single detail. Now, for anybody who somehow missed it, May of last year is when Remy Ma decided she had carried enough. And when Remy decided she was done, she did not do it quietly. Remy did not subliminal anybody. Remy did not leak anything through a friend of a friend. Remy Ma opened up her own platform and read her own marriage out loud like a court stenographer, and the whole globe sat there with their jaws on the carpet. She told everybody that when she walked out of that prison gate, she walked into nothing. She told everybody she had been paying the rent from inside a cell. She told everybody she had been cutting a 20% check to a man who called himself her manager but never once called himself responsible for a single bill. She told everybody she had been buying her own gifts for years and letting that man take the public credit for them, just so his image stayed polished for the timeline. Read that again, y'all. She was incarcerated, and the rent was still coming out of her pocket. She was the one holding the whole house up from behind a wall, and the man on the outside was holding his hand out. So when people try to paint Remy Ma as the bitter ex, I need you to remember who was financing whom. Remy was not the dependent in that marriage. She was the provider. She was the engine. She was the whole power grid, and the second she unplugged herself, the whole operation went dark. And then came the sentence that split the whole thing open like a fault line. Remy told that man, publicly, in front of everybody, sign the divorce papers. Get my jewelry out of that pawn shop and sign the papers. And I remember sitting there thinking, listen to how she said that. Because Remy did not say it like a wounded woman begging for closure. Remy did not say it like somebody hoping to be chased. Remy said it like a woman returning an item at customer service. Remy said it like somebody closing out a business account she should have closed a long time ago. That was not heartbreak talking. That was a receipt being handed back. That was a woman who had already emotionally left the building and was simply asking the last person inside to flick the lights off on his way out. But Remy was not finished, and this is the part that matters for tonight's story. Along with the speech came the receipts. All of them. Text messages. Call logs. Screenshots. Photographs. And not fuzzy, could be anybody photographs either, y'all. Clear ones. Time-stamped ones. Ones that allegedly placed Claressa Shields in the frame during a window of time when Papoose was still legally married and still physically living in the marital home. And then she went even further, because Remy named, or at the very least heavily implied, additional women that Papoose was allegedly entertaining during Remy's incarceration. Women beyond her. A whole rotation, allegedly. A whole lineup. And that is the part one need everybody to freeze on, because this is the part that makes her interview performance so painful to watch. The man she sat in that studio defending with her whole chest is, according to Remy Ma's own sworn testimony by screenshot, a man who was not even faithful to Claressa during the period Claressa believed was exclusive. Do the math on that. Sit with that. The woman on the couch is fighting for the honor of a relationship that, per the receipts, had a revolving door. And she does not know it. Or she does know it and has decided she cannot afford to know it. Either way, that is the tragedy underneath all the comedy, and we are going to circle back to it before we are done tonight, I promise you that. Now, there is one more piece of May you need to hold on to, because it is the loaded weapon at the center of this entire story. During that same stretch, in one of her verses that went absolutely nuclear, Remy Ma did not call Claressa the new girlfriend. She did not call her the fiancée. She did not call her the future wife. Remy Ma called Claressa his current come-up. His current come-up. Y'all, I have turned that phrase over in my mind 100 times, and it gets more surgical every single time. Because that is not an insult. An insult you can fight. That is a diagnosis. In 4 syllables, Remy reframed the entire relationship as a financial mobility program. Not a romance. A ladder. The suggestion, and I am telling you what the culture heard, is that Papoose looked at a young Olympic champion riding the biggest wave of her career, the gold medals, the biopic, the brand deals, the headlines, and he saw a platform he could attach himself to while his own name cooled off. Come up. Current. 2 words doing the work of a whole dissertation. Current means there were others before her, and current means there could be others after her. That phrase does not just demote her. That phrase puts an expiration date on her. And then Remy set the boundary that Claressa just bulldozed on camera. Remy made it known, plain as print, that if the current come-up ever spoke on her by name, ever opened her mouth about Remy Ma in public, then she would stop aiming at the girlfriend entirely and drag Papoose himself out into the daylight. That was the treaty. That was the line in the sand. Everybody in the commentary space knew it. Every blog knew it. And if we know it, then Papoose knows it. And if Papoose knows it, then Claressa knew it too. So with all of that on the record, with that entire treaty sitting there glowing like a tripwire, guess what Claressa Shields chose to do when Miss Shenica asked her one respectful question? She did not just trip the wire. She grabbed the wire with both hands and yanked it. Because after the nobody's husband comment, after the he filed because he is serious rewrite, she kept going, and she started speaking on Remy Ma directly. On camera. On the record. In front of a national audience. And the second Remy's name cleared her lips, every commentator in this space sat straight up in their chair, because we all knew what that meant. She did not just break the rule. She loaded Remy Ma's cannon for her, handed it back, and pointed it at the man sitting at home. And can we talk about how fast the footage traveled, because the velocity tells its own story. Within hours of that clip leaving the studio, it was in every group chat, every live stream, every reaction panel in the culture. Commentators who had been sitting on this topic for months, carefully, respectfully, afraid to be the first one to say it out loud, suddenly had their permission slip. Because once the question gets asked on camera, nobody has to be brave anymore. The floodgates do not need a second push. By the next morning, the clip had been chopped, captioned, slowed down, and frame by frame from every possible angle, and every single angle made it worse, because there was no angle where the answer looked good. That is the thing about a moment like this. A normal bad quote has one bad angle. This had a whole carousel of them. And you know who else watched it? Every host who had ever ducked the question. Every single one of them had to sit at home and watch Miss Shenica do in 90 seconds what they had been paid to avoid doing for over a year. Do you understand the professional embarrassment in that? There are interviewers with 10 times her platform who booked this exact guest, sat across from this exact situation, smiled, asked about training camp, and sent everybody home. And then a woman with a smaller set and a bigger spine walked in and made the whole circuit look like a row of security guards who politely held the door for the very thing they were hired to stop. That is why you are seeing so much support for Miss Shenica right now. It is not just that she asked the question. It is that she exposed how many people chose not to. And listen, because the collapse did not stop there. When she had some distance from that moment, when she had every opportunity to cool off, regroup, and find her dignity in the parking lot, she instead circled back and made it worse. Because she described Miss Shenica's question as corny. That is the word she chose. Corny. The most careful, most compassionate, most genuinely sisterly question that any interviewer has offered this woman in 6 months, and Claressa stamped it with the same word teenagers use for a lame joke at the lunch table. Let me tell you what corny actually looks like, since apparently the definition has gone fuzzy. Corny is climbing onto the lap of a man who is still legally somebody's husband and captioning the picture like you just won a belt. Corny is posting little victory slogans over a relationship that another woman returned like a defective appliance. Corny is telling the internet, forget her and forget her too, about a woman who has never once spoken your name in public. Corny is not the question. Corny is the situation the question was asking about. And deep down, underneath the belts and the bravado, I believe she knows it. Then came the moment that genuinely made me close my eyes. Because she, still spinning, reached for the spiritual varnish. She told the audience that she had handled the entire exchange with composure, and that God is working on her. God is working on her. Sweetheart, I need us to be very careful with that sentence, because composure was available in that room and Claressa declined it. Composure looked like a smile and a graceful redirect. Composure sounded like, I do not speak on my partner's past out of respect for everyone involved. Composure was sitting right there on the menu, and she ordered the chaos platter with extra denial on the side. What happened on that set was not composure. What happened on that set was a woman unraveling in real time and mistaking the spinning for elevation. And as far as God working on her, oh, I agree. God is absolutely working on her. But God is not working the way she thinks. Because every time a woman like Miss Shenica walks into her orbit and asks a direct question with love underneath it, that is God sliding a mirror across the table. Every time a commentator stands up and says, ma'am, the timeline does not support what you are saying, that is God sending another messenger. Every time a laugh appears on her story instead of a paragraph, that is God whispering, daughter, please wake up before the credits roll. The envelopes keep arriving. She keeps stamping them return to sender and calling the pile unopened mail a testimony. So let us count, because we have to count. In one single sit-down, Claressa Shields managed to speak on a woman she had no standing to speak on. She attempted to rewrite the legal definition of marriage on the spot. She reframed a court filing as a love letter. She insulted the one interviewer brave enough to treat her like an adult. She credited herself with composure during a segment where everybody watched her come apart. And she dressed the whole thing up as spiritual growth. That is 6 unforced errors in a single interview. 6. A tennis player would call that a bagel set. And the heartbreaking part is that none of it was forced. Miss Shenica did not trap her. Miss Shenica did not ambush her. Miss Shenica offered her a doorway, and she set the doorway on fire. And if this feels familiar, it should, because this is a pattern. This is not Claressa's first time walking into a verbal arena and swinging on a woman who did nothing to her. The culture still remembers the Alicia situation, where she threw an unprompted shot at another elite athlete, another woman grinding at the top of her craft, over what turned out to be nothing but insecurity wearing a trash talk costume. And then, when the backlash came, the complaint was that everybody was being mean to her. There is a documented rhythm here. Punch at a sister, miss, and then cry about the echo. And every single time, the same chorus has to sit down and gently explain the same lesson. Ma'am, stay in your lane. Ma'am, the sisterhood is not your heavy bag. Ma'am, this is not the fight you want. But here is the layer that actually breaks my heart, and I need the whole room quiet for this one. When Miss Shenica asked that question, she did not ask it from a throne. She told the champ, in her own words, that she had lived something similar. Do you understand what that is? That is not an attack. That is not bait. That is a woman standing in front of you with old burned scars on her hands, telling you the stove is hot. Miss Shenica was not trying to embarrass her. Miss Shenica was trying to hand her the map out of a burning building that Miss Shenica herself had once escaped from. That is the most expensive gift one woman can give another, the wisdom bought with her own survival. And she looked at that gift, called it corny, and kept dancing in the smoke. Because that is the part the culture cannot get past. Miss Shenica was not a hater. Miss Shenica was a lifeline. And she was too busy defending a filed but not final marriage to recognize the rope for what it was. And I want you to hold that image, the rope thrown and refused, because it is about to matter again when we talk about the man who was not in the room at all. And I want to widen the lens for a moment, because there is a reason this stings so much more than ordinary celebrity mess. This is not a reality star fumbling a storyline. This is Claressa Shields. This is Flint, Michigan's own. This is a woman who fought her way out of circumstances that would have flattened most people, who stood on Olympic podiums twice, who carried professional belts across multiple divisions, who watched her own life story play on a movie screen while she is still young enough to add chapters to it. The stakes attached to her name are not gossip stakes. They are legacy stakes. There are little girls in gyms right now wrapping their hands and saying her name while they hit the bag. There are brands with her face in their decks. There is a whole generation of young women who watch her to learn what unbothered excellence looks like. And that is exactly why the culture reacts so loudly every time this relationship drags her into the mud, because everybody can see what is being put at risk. In the ring, she can lose a round and come back in the next one. That is the beauty of the sport. But public narrative does not work like a scorecard. Public narrative is a slow leak, and every messy interview lets a little more air out of a reputation that took 20 years to inflate. Sponsors notice. Networks notice. The people who write history notice. And the most frustrating part for everybody watching is that none of this damage is coming from an opponent. It is self-inflicted, one sit-down at a time, in defense of a man who has never once stood in front of a camera and absorbed a single blow for her. The champion keeps stepping into the pocket for somebody who will not even walk to the ring with her. And every time she does it, the whole arena winces, because the whole arena knows exactly what she is worth, even when she seems to have forgotten. Now let us talk about the response, because Remy Ma had one locked and loaded before the clip even finished its first lap around the internet. And I need you to understand the genius of what Remy did, because it was not a response in the traditional sense. There was no video. There was no caption. There was no essay with 47 comments disabled underneath it. The very same day that Miss Shenica clip started boiling, she quietly slid into her stories and posted one thin slice of Cardi B's newest record. Not the whole song. One slice. The slice that says, in spirit, these women desperately want her to care about them, but you cannot flex on a queen with something the queen already threw away. And she laid that lyric over a short clip of herself laughing. Just laughing. Head back, shoulders loose, laughing like a woman watching a rerun of a show she already knows the ending to. No name. No mention. No punctuation. And yet everybody on earth knew exactly who that post was for, because precision does not require a label. And the message inside that laugh was so clean you could eat off it. Claressa, you are not flexing. You are not winning. You are spinning around in a hand-me-down and calling it couture. Because Remy did not lose Papoose. Remy released Papoose. She returned him. She slid the whole situation across the counter like a coat she was done wearing, and now the new owner is twirling in that coat for the gram, convinced she found vintage. Baby, the coat is used. The coat has stains. The coat came free with the paperwork. And here is why the laugh hit harder than any verse ever could. When a woman has already won, she does not argue the score. She does not have to. Silence from the winner lands heavier than a paragraph from the loser, because silence says the outcome is so obvious it does not even need commentary. She has spent over a year letting the timeline do her heavy lifting. She does not throw punches anymore. She posts weather reports and lets the storm explain itself. And in the economy of public feuds, when your opponent's silence is louder than your whole defense, you have already lost the round before the bell even rang. But now let us get to the part that the whole culture is whispering about, the part that turns this from a girlfriend gaffe into something much colder. Because let us not sit here and pretend. There is no version of this story, none, where Claressa Shields walks into a national interview and starts freestyling about Remy Ma without a green light from the man in the middle. Remember, Papoose is the architect of the treaty. Papoose spent over a year standing behind that polished little phrase, "I do not speak on my wife." He preached it. He practiced it. He trained his partner on it. Rules like that do not break by accident. Rules like that break because somebody quietly removed the guardrail and said, "Go ahead, say what I cannot say." And if that is what happened, and the entire commentary world believes that is what happened, then what you are looking at is not a love story at all. You are looking at a man who allegedly watched his estranged wife glow up, level up, book the stages, headline the tours, and walk into her piece with her head high, and he could not stand the sound of it. So instead of saying a word himself, he sent his current partner into a public arena to swing the punches he was too careful to throw. She takes the hit. He keeps his hands clean. That is not protection. That is ventriloquism. And that is where Papoose's silence becomes the loudest thing in this entire saga. Because if that man genuinely loved Claressa, he would not be letting her march into camera after camera and torch her own name on his behalf. A man who loves you stands in front of the arrows, not behind them. A man who loves you steps to the microphone first and says, "My partner does not answer for my past, direct everything at me." A man who loves you protects your dignity even when it costs him his. But what has Papoose done? He has ducked. He has hidden. He has let the woman carrying his water get burned by the steam, and then he has sat at home watching the replays like a man with no matches in his pocket, even though everybody can smell the smoke on his sleeves. Because let us be honest about the geometry here. Papoose is not a rising name. Papoose is not a fresh face with a runway in front of him. Papoose is a veteran of the craft with a respected pen, a loyal but limited audience, and a catalog that the current generation mostly knows through somebody else's story. And Remy has been signaling, in verse after verse and quiet post after quiet post, that this relationship is not a coincidence of timing. A man at that stage of his career attaching himself to an Olympic champion at the exact moment her biopic is in theaters and her stock has never been higher. The culture does not believe in coincidences that convenient. The culture calls that a roster move. The culture calls that a stage-managed come-up. And the tragic part is that the only person in the entire ecosystem who cannot see the chessboard is the woman standing on the square. And meanwhile, over a full year later, the divorce is still not final. Read that slowly. Filed, yes. Final, no. The paperwork sits. The court dates stretch. The process drags like it has cinder blocks tied to its ankles. And at some point you have to ask why. You have to ask what kind of man races to file when his wife shames him into it, and then strolls toward the finish line like he has nowhere to be. Because the answer the whole culture keeps landing on is an ugly one. He does not actually want to be divorced. He wants to be dating while still married. He wants the aesthetic of freedom without the paperwork of freedom. He wants Claressa's spotlight with none of the certainty that would force him to fully close one door before walking through the other. And the champion keeps signing up for the rerun, season after season, like the finale has not already leaked. So now let us take the full inventory, because somebody has to. In the space of one press run, the story Claressa Shields was supposed to be selling was a fairy tale. The champion who conquered the ring and then conquered love. The small-town phenom who became a two-time Olympic gold medalist, a world champion across multiple weight classes, a woman with her life story on a movie screen, and a king waiting at home. That was the movie she wanted us all to watch. And instead, one question, one respectful, loving, sisterly question, peeled the poster off the wall, and everybody got a look at what was underneath. A woman defending a man who will not defend her. A woman speaking on a wife she was forbidden to speak on, until allegedly she was quietly permitted to. A woman calling her unraveling composure and her confusion enlightenment, while the actual, legal, still standing wife of the man in the middle sits at home laughing at song lyrics and letting the timeline clock in for her. Because that is the scene, y'all. That is the actual frame. On one side of the screen you have Claressa on a press couch, voice climbing, definitions bending, calling lifelines corny. On the other side you have Remy Ma, posted up in peace, pressing share on a Cardi B lyric and going back to her day. One woman is explaining. The other woman is existing. And I need somebody to write this down, because it is the whole fight in one sentence. Explanation is the tax you pay when you are losing. She has not explained a thing in over a year, because winners do not file paperwork with the court of public opinion. They just let the record stand. And the cruelest twist of all, the detail that turns this whole saga from gossip into Greek tragedy, is that everybody saw this ending except the woman living it. The commentators saw it. The fans saw it. The other fighters saw it. Miss Shenica saw it so clearly that she reached out her hand on camera to try to stop it. Even Cardi B saw enough of it to have a lyric sitting on the shelf that Remy could deploy like a guided missile a full news cycle later. The entire arena can see the scoreboard. The only person who thinks the fight is going her way is the one the referee is about to stop. And I do not say that to be cruel. I say that because it is the saddest thing I have watched all year, a woman with championship instincts in the ring who cannot read the most telegraphed punch of her life outside of it. Now, before we close, I need to say this directly, and I need it to land exactly how I mean it. Claressa, if this video ever crosses your screen, and something tells me it might, hear me with your whole heart. Nobody in this space hates you. Nobody is celebrating your discomfort. Nobody in the culture is rooting for your fall. What everybody wants, what Miss Shenica wants, what your real fans want, what your legacy demands, and whether you believe it or not, what Remy Ma's silence has been screaming this entire time, is for you to wake up before this movie writes its ending without your signature on it. Because there is still a version of this story where Claressa Shields walks away with her belts, her bag, her biopic, and her dignity fully intact. That version exists. It is on the table right now. But the window is closing, and every interview you take, every lap photo you post, every caption you aim at a woman who has never once said your name, shaves another minute off that clock. You are a champion. Not a come-up. Not a current anything. A champion. And champions know that the most important skill in any fight is not the punch you throw, it is the one you refuse to walk into. The whole culture is not attacking you, baby. The whole culture is trying to catch you. Miss Shenica's question was not corny. It was a rescue rope. Remy's laugh was not mockery. It was a flare fired into the sky from the safe shore, showing you where the rocks are. And the God you keep saying is working on you has been delivering envelopes by the truckload, and every one of them has the same message written inside. The man is not the prize. The piece is the prize. Open the mail. And Miss Shenica, darling, before we go, we have to give you your flowers, because you earned every petal. In an entire circuit of hosts who chose the vibe over the truth, you were the one who looked a champion in the eye and asked the question that mattered, and when she called it corny, you did not flinch, you did not fold, you did not clap back. You just let the tape roll, because you understood what she did not, that the tape always tells the truth. A real sister is willing to be called a hater today to keep her friend out of the headlines tomorrow, and baby, you proved that in high definition. So where does this whole triangle go from here? Honestly, the writing is not just on the wall, it is framed and hung. The writing was on the wall the moment the divorce filing was allowed to collect dust for over a year. The writing was on the wall the moment Claressa got branded a current come-up on a record the whole world heard. The writing was on the wall the second she argued, on tape, that a still married man is nobody's husband. The writing is written, signed, dated, and notarized, and the only person still trying to erase it is the woman standing directly in front of it. The paperwork will keep dragging, because dragging is the point. The interviews will keep coming, because the press run is not over. And she will keep winning rounds without throwing a single punch, because that is what it looks like when somebody already knows how the story ends. And now I am turning the whole thing over to y'all, because the comments section is where this conversation really lives. Tell me everything. Do you think Claressa ever opens the envelopes, or does she ride this all the way to the credits? Do you believe the divorce paperwork is stalled on purpose, or is it really just the slow wheels of the court? Has Remy Ma already won every round of this fight without throwing one punch, or do you think the biggest response is still sitting in the chamber? And give Miss Shenica her rating, 1 through 10, for being the only interviewer in the entire circuit with a spine. And be honest with me, is the culture being too hard on Claressa, or are we not being honest enough with her? Whichever line in this saga made you gasp the loudest, I want to see it quoted down below. And while you are down there, do your girl one solid. Tap that like button like it owes you money, subscribe if you have not already, and ring that notification bell so aggressively that your neighbors file a noise complaint, because the next chapter of this saga is already writing itself. The envelopes are still in the mail. The laugh is still echoing. The paperwork is still pending. And the very next time Claressa Shields sits down in front of a camera, we are going to be right here, breaking down every frame of it together. Stay ready, stay locked, and I will see you in the next one, because baby, this story is nowhere near done, and neither are we.